Hello again. We're going to go ahead and continue with our refactor here in our three-part playlist. Because I told you guys earlier, anchor tags don't work, that holds true here. So we're actually going to import our link tag from React Router DOM. So React Router DOM is doing all the heavy lifting for us, and it's keeping track of where we are in our application, what route we're on, if they take parameters, whatever have you, and it all plugs it in and wires it up with this link tag that we can use wherever we want in our application to use some navigation. So we are going to change these anchor tags into the link tag, like so. And as you know, it doesn't take an href, but it takes a to, and it specifies a path we're going to go to. We don't have one yet, so we're going to have to code one. So to go to an individual post, this path, and we're going to make this exact so I don't run into my error from before. It's going to be, you know what, we're going to do the exact same solution that every student does. I'll be just as guilty about it. We're going to say /posts. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, and even I was super lost back in February with this. We have to code a route that will have some kind of number with it that will help us to determine what the ID of the post is we're trying to visit. So we're going to add a slash, a colon, and the variable ID. This says anytime we go to /post/ some kind of number, it will go there and we'll have access to that number on the component. That will make hopefully more sense once I start wiring this up a bit further. We don't have a component we have yet, so we're going to make something called new file single post.jsx. Here we go. We're going to start it off as a functional component. Oh boy. We'll get props, and it will return some JSX. And like I've been telling y'all, let's just make sure we got it wired up before it does anything fancy, just so we know that that part is done. Single post. So now I'm going to bring it in here and import single post there. We're going to also need to import it up here. There we go. Done. Done. So let's check her out. Let's see. So on navbar, homeworks, posts work, and I don't have, these aren't wired up yet. So if I manually type in /post/1, hello from single post. So now we know it is wired up correctly. Cool. So now that this part is wired up, let's see how we can access this variable of :id somewhere in our application. This is built into router. Our browser router that wraps our entire application has this built into it. Every time it successfully navigates a route, matches the path, resolves it, and renders the component linked to that path, it will automatically generate a couple props on the component it renders. There's one called history, there's one called URL, I think, or location, one of the two, I can't remember off the top of my head, and there's one called match, and that's the one we want right now. So this is where it's going to get a little bit crazy, so try and follow along. Post ID, and it's going to be some JSX, and it's going to be props.match.params.id. Cool. So match is an object on the props object that's generated by our browser router. Params is an object on match if there are any route parameters. And this final one here of ID is what's matching up to this guy of ID. So it matched the route. It said, are there any parameters? Yes, there are. And that's found out by looking at this colon here. It says there are route parameters. What is it called? It's the text directly after the colon called ID. So that's where we get props.match.params.id. So for example, if we called, instead of ID, we called it /pizza, over here we'd have to do props.match.params.pizza, like this, right? And result in the same thing. I'm going to call it ID though, so it actually makes more sense moving forward, because pizza will confuse the crap out of everybody probably. Yeah, so props.match.params.id, and let's test it out. So if I type in /posts/2, it should pop up 2 because this is the ID. This is the : ID that it found. That's the route parameter. We specified it's going to be some kind of ID, colon ID, and in this case it's 2, so it should print out post ID, colon 2 in our render. Ah, dope. Now if I type in 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, it corresponds to it down there, right? Pretty cool. That is route parameters, or our route parameters in a nutshell. Again, if I called this pizza, match.params.pizza, and it'd also be spitting out down here. Now this is actually a string, not a set of numbers, so keep that in mind. Yeah, so we've coded a generic route that accepts some route parameters, and now we have a single post guy here that will dynamically display that route parameter for us. That's all it does. All right? So how do we tie this back into what we were doing earlier? Here's what we do. So this link tag wants to go to the post body. So what it can do is say it's going to go to /posts, but not all of them. It's going to go to a particular kind. So we want it to go to some kind of ID, right? Which we have access to right here. We have an ID for these guys. So we don't type in this because it's not going to know what ID it's looking for. So this is going to become a template literal now, like this. We're going to delete these double quotes and do template literals. And these template literals are going to have a slash. Oh, we can't use template literals until we break. JSX doesn't have template literals. So what we have to do is break out of the JSX with these guys, and now we have access to template literals. So now we can use our backticks here, and it can say go to /post/ID. Dope. And since we got the body out of here, we'll remove the body. There we go. So this guy, say it's ID 1, it'll generate a link that says /post/1. If this guy is the 98th post in our list of posts, it will be /post/98. And so now we dynamically have a button that will navigate to a route for us based on this post's ID. So 1, 2, 3, 4. If we click on this show post body, it should go to post/4, and it should say post ID colon 4. And yeah, there we go. Ha 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 ha! So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This should be the 6th one, so it should be ID 6. Hell yeah. Scrolling all the way to the bottom, this should be our 100th guy. There she is, y'all. There it is. Dope. We got that up and running. But you're wondering, what's the point of that, dude? Well, we could actually do something else now. We're done in postcard, and we're done in app.jsx for now. And we're in our single post component. We have a class. We're going to upgrade this to a class because it's going to have to use some component lifecycle methods here. So we're going to upgrade this to a class component. It's going to extend react.component. Yep. Remember, every class component has to have a render. That's just a requirement. That render has to return something. There we go. Dunskies. And before we even change anything else, we're going to test this. But don't forget, on class components, props is not defined. We have to specify the context of the props, which is this. That's where this craziness of this.props.match.params.id comes from. And God, I hate typing that. And good Lord, is it confusing. But coming back to our code here, yeah, well, I did that by accident, by misclicking, but we should be able to see that it still works. So let's click on the third one. Still says post ID 3, right? Post ID 7. It's all wired up and working still. But now let's say we wanted the body. Now, we could actually pass the body as a prop with this guy, but that's actually pretty difficult at your skill level, so I'll let you figure that out on your own, or I could do a follow-up lesson if anyone is curious. Let's assume instead we're going to make a new API call in single post to get the body itself, and that's it. So we're going to need access to state, obviously, because we're going to have to set some state on this guy when we do a fetch call. So it's going to be a constructor with some props, this.state. Now instead, our state's going to be an object as always. It's going to have one property on here called post or something like that. And that post is going to be an object and no longer an array. And if you're wondering where I'm getting that from, is over here on their route endpoints. So just like where you can get a single film or a single person in your Ghibli API, you can do the same thing here. /post gets us all 100 posts. But what if I want the 99th post? Well, you do a /99. And again, this is how they programmed their routes. This does not work for every single API. I just know that post / the number, aka a parameter, of ID will correspond to the ID in the list. So this should get us the 99th post in their thing. Here we go. ID 99 has this body. Or if I wanted the 54th post, There's ID 54, so these two match up together, and there's our body for that post. And that's how we're going to do a new fetch call that will access what we need to get, what information we need to get here. So we're going to have another component will mount, lifecycle method. It's going to do a fetch. The fetch will be, we're going to put this one in backticks to start. So let's just copy and paste the 54 example first. Now, because we don't want to go to /54 every time, we want to go to a specific ID every time. And right here in our current code base, we already have that ID dynamically generated for us via, you guessed it, this.props.match.params.id.killme. So we're going to remove this 54, do our template literal here, and I'm just going to copy and paste this crap in because I'm not typing that again. Booyah. Booyah. Got it. So I'm going to actually clear out this H1 for a minute here. I know it's going to give me an error because it's not returning any JSX, but I'm going to finish out this lifecycle method first. That response is still going to be a data stream, so we're still going to have to do a res.json like this. Then whatever that response is going to be, we're going to call it a single post. That single post, guess what, is going to set state ES6 post is equal to post. Booyah, done. And because we're good little coders, we're going to go ahead and throw a catch error. It's going to console log the error for now. OMFG E. There we go. That is now done skis. So we now have access to state within this guy. So I'm going to put a new H1 and I'm going to do this. This.state.post.id. So we come in via the props match params ID. It fetches that post and we should now have access to it on state. Meaning we've done an entirely new fetch call for an individual post and it's to be now reflected in our state. So ultimately, this should be still displaying the same thing on the other side of the page. So if this is the third one, it should be ID 3. There she is. And you saw it took a second for it to display because it had to make the fetch call, which is an asynchronous amount of time that happens. And so it takes sometimes like a half a second for it to actually load correctly. So if we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, it did that correctly. I'm wondering why it might be. There it is. Told you. The APIs can be sometimes slow to respond. So that's why you have to have these errors in there. And sometimes you might have like loading spinners while these things do their fetch calls. But there it is. There's 7. So I told you guys earlier I wanted to show the card body along with the rest of the stuff. So I'm going to copy and paste some bootstrap in here. Like so. I'm going to auto format it. I don't know why that auto format failed so badly. There we go. You know it doesn't like the name class on JSX. It has to be class name. And then we're going to have, you guessed it, this.state.post.body. Booyah. And we should be just about wired up and good to go. There's the body of the post right there for us. Yeah, so now we're doing a successful fetch call to an individual post at an individual endpoint. Kind of like if you got all films, you can click on one film and that subcomponent, that child component, can make a fetch call to the individual film's information and display the rest of it. And that's it. If you have any questions about route parameters, the switch, the router, or anything else happening in this particular set of demos, please let me know. And happy hacking. I'll see you guys Tuesday the 16th at 1 p.m. where I'll be in class helping demystify React Router along with helping anyone out with their labs. So see you soon.